Big boy on the rails. Before we get started on the video today, I wanted to thank you all who have subscribed. We have now surpassed 900 subscribers. I personally am the most surprised person that this has happened. But thank you very much for subscribing and keep watching the videos. They're fun to make and I hope you find them enjoyable also. Thanks for watching. Hello everybody and welcome back to Old, Frail, and Decrepit. Today we're going to have a look at some locomotives that I picked up at the recent Lincoln Area Railroad Historical Society trade show. That was in February 2024. And these are some locomotives that I've been looking for, well, one in particular, and they go along with this one right here. This is one that I've had for some time. I had picked it up a few years ago at an Omaha train show. And now we're going to have a look at some others that I picked up that I hope you find very interesting. I've been looking for them for a while, and we found them at this train show. So enjoy the video. At the end, we're going to have a look at another locomotive that I've had for a while, but this one needed a little work. So we're going to talk about that and see it run too. Thanks for watching. Now these are the 1668s and 1688s that I have. This one down here is the one that I had picked up in Omaha a few years ago, probably 4 or 5 years ago, and runs real nice. But I did not have a 1688. I had the 1668, but I didn't have the 1688. And I'd looked for them on eBay, and of course, they were going for ridiculous prices. Well, I and my son went to the Lincoln train show, and you know, I've usually got a pretty good eye for looking out and finding the things I'm looking for. Well, this particular train show, apparently I needed a seeing eye dog, because I walked right by a 1688 with tender for $45. And it was a 1688E. And if you look at the little cow catcher here, it's real thin. Now, what does that mean? Well, it means it was an early one. You see how thick the later ones are? So here it was. It wasn't the earliest. And I talked to my son about that. I said, well, he says, did you notice how thin that was? I said, no, I never paid any attention to it. He says, yep. He says, that means it's an early one. It's not the earliest, because the earliest would have had the windows right here. But it was an early production. What was it? 1936, I think these came out. And the 1688s came out first, and then the 1668s came out. But the early ones had this thin, real thin pilot here. So it was prone to breakage. So then, a little later on, they came out and they made these little thicker ones, which you could see where that would be a little more durable. So I had myself a 1688E. I thought, well, that's tremendous. I've been looking for that for quite a while. and still being super observant, pretty soon the grandson comes running up and says, "Dad says you need to come quick." So I ran over to the table he was at, and he points to this tote underneath the table. He says, "You interested?" And inside were this locomotive, and this locomotive. This one here is a 1668 that somebody repainted. I love the paint scheme. They didn't do a great job on it, but truth is, don't tell anybody, but they did a better job than I could have done. So I said, sure, I'm interested in those 3. So I got the 3 of those for $36. And came with 2 tenders. And I was real pleased with them, even though all 3 of them were in non-working condition. This particular one, the pickup shoes were gone off of it, and missing the side rods, and it had a horrible paint job. So I stripped it down, and my son said, "You know, one of those might be kind of cool in a white." So I thought, you know what? I'll see if I can't do that. So I did a black coat down here on the bottom part here and across the front. And up here, I was going to do black, but I just couldn't get it to look right. So what I did was I just stripped it down and left it bare. That does look pretty good. Now I also had to buy a bunch of these lanterns, because even the 1688 on the end down there was missing one of those, and this 1688 was missing one. So I went and bought all new lanterns for them, so they'd all have that. So this one, after I put the pickups on it, I put it on the track while I had the motor out, put the motor on the track, and it started to smoke. Well, I noticed that the E-unit was messed up on it, and I thought, you know what, this is just a spare anyway. I'll just take the E-unit out and just bypass it. Put it back on the track after I get done with that, and it was still smoking. But it was smoking from places you aren't supposed to get smoke. So I had an 1101 that had the same motor as this. So I just swapped it out because that was a duplicate also. So that's got a good motor in it now. This one here, the wheels on this one were good, though the motor didn't run. And this one, the wheels were bad. So what I did was I stole the wheels off of this one and put it on here. So that meant I had an empty shell. Well, a while back I'd picked up this pre-war Marx motor. And the bar that's on the back of those larger motors, this bar, you can see it in the back here where, let's see if we can get the light on it there. But it's where the screw comes down from the top and holds the motor in place. You drill out that rivet right there, screw it back in place, and it matches up perfect with the slot on the back of the Marx motor. Then you just have to jerry-rig something at the front. So that's what I did. So this one's got a Marx motor in it. which the nice thing about a Marx motor, I don't have to worry about it running. It's going to run. This one, the E unit had the same problem as the 1688. And so I just bypassed the E unit on it. And this one works fine. I also had to put in a headlight. I guess I had to put a headlight into this one, and this one also. And I just did that LED from Evan Design and that. So replaced the pickups on these, and it makes a little noise, but you know what? I like the looks of it. I like that color scheme. So it's always good to go with somebody you know. And this was one time that my son, rather than buying all things and then tell me all about it later, actually let me have a couple of them. I think the only reason he did that is he already got a shelf of these. So now we're going to run some trains. This is my 221 that I picked up a few years ago at an estate sale auction house where they auction off things left over from estate sales. And the guy had advertised this, and I think I paid like $60 for it. But when I got it home, it ran. So I had never taken it apart. I'd never done anything more than just oiled the oil points where you had things moving and little grease on the gears. Well, I had just purchased a bunch of replacement pickup shoes. So I thought, well, I'll put new shoes on this one. When I was doing that, I noticed that the headlight wire was coming down across here. It was actually laying on this back wheel. And I thought, well, now that ain't any good. So for the very first time, I took this apart and found that it was all threaded through in a very strange way. So I put it back through in a more reasonable position where it was out of the way and wouldn't be laying on any moving parts. So I put it back together, put it on the track, and the headlight would light, but that was all. You could hear the E unit cycling, but the motor would not run. So I figured while I had it apart, I would just go ahead and do the works. Clean the commutator plate, which you can see is nice and shiny now in there. And just couldn't see what was wrong till I got to looking for the brushes and only found one brush. Well, the other one was still there, but it was stuck up in the tube. The carbon buildup and the junk from however many decades of running had made it so that when I was moving the engine around to get the headlight back in place, that brush had gotten pushed up into the tube and the spring wasn't strong enough to push it back down. So got a thin wire and pushed it out from the backside, because this is one of those closed tube jobs. Has a hole at the top of the tube. Let's see if we can even see that. Yeah, I can't really see it, but they are closed tube, and then they got a little hole. So got a little wire, pushed the brush out, gave it a good cleaning, cleaned up the brush itself, and now it moves. Well, it's not full of junk anymore. So I put it back together, and yes, it does run nice. So sometimes it's just a little simple thing that will cause you to have problems with these. I was glad it was, because it was getting kind of late that day and I wasn't sure I wanted to spend any more time finding out what it was. So we're going to see this thing run too.